Welcome, fans of High Spots TV and subsequently the DVD release on highspots.com. Today we're here with Mark Jindrak, Marco Corleone. It's a pleasure to have you in town with us today.
Thank you.
Before we talk about wrestling, which is going to be 99% of this interview, I want to just get a little more about your background and your upbringing. Can you tell us maybe your athletic background even before you got into pro wrestling?
Oh well, when I started as a child, I was a big fan of professional wrestling, but I was more of a fan of. I grew up in Auburn, New York, which is about 20 minutes from Syracuse, New York, and a big basketball fan and big wrestling fan. Basically, I went on to play college basketball at a place called Keuka College, which is a Division II school outside of Rochester, New York, and basically I stayed there until my sophomore year, which was, I think, was 97. And then when I was a sophomore going to my junior year, I actually moved down to Florida, Orlando, Florida, with some of my teammates on the basketball team who had actually graduated and they were going to start their careers. So that's how I got into basically the professional wrestling. As you know, back in the late 90s, WCW filmed their TV at Universal Studios, and I met some wrestlers in a restaurant one time, Alex Wright and Barry Houston, and basically that's how I found out about the power plant.
But what were you doing at the time when you moved to Florida?
Nothing. I was absolutely doing nothing, just hanging out. Two of my friends moved down there to start their careers. I figured it'd be a great plan to come down there for a summer, Orlando, Florida, and I never went back to school after that. So basically, nothing, just messing around. Young guy, just wanted to see different parts of the world.
What did you study when you were in college?
Marketing. I was a marketing major, and and I'm glad I did, because I did pay attention. I did learn some stuff about marketing, and I think it's very important in our careers as wrestlers, because it's very very much self-marketing. Marketing your character, marketing your gimmick. Whatever clothes, design, whatever goes along with your character. And so I've used a lot of that over the years.
Hey, you mentioned it was just a circumstantial meeting with Alex Wright.
Well, actually, what happened? I was working at this restaurant. Let me clarify. I was working at the restaurant. I stated, I moved down. I drove down a U-Haul truck, my friend's U-Haul truck. So it was basically, I was going to hang out in Orlando. They had a sweet pad. They had a pool and everything. So I figured, what the hell? I'm going to go down there and check it out. So since I didn't have a car, I actually got a job close by, and I was waiting tables at a Denny's, and this was outside of SeaWorld, so I was working the graveyard shift because I wanted weekends off, and so I worked the graveyard shift. And one particular night is actually a night that kind of changed my life, because in this particular night, I was waiting tables. It was maybe 4 a.m, and nobody was in the restaurant. Myself, the dishwasher, and the cook was in the restaurant. And I think I was vacuuming at the time. And earlier that night, Barry Houston, a guy named Barry Houston, which you may or may not know, but and Alex Wright, who's more of a notable name, they came into the restaurant, and we shot the shit a little bit, and we talked, and they asked me, man, you got a pretty good physique. Would you play sports? I'm like, yeah, I'm a basketball player, and I'm just down here for the summer. And Barry Houston had actually asked me, have you ever thought about wrestling? Do you like wrestling? I was like, well, I watched it when I was younger in the Hulk Hogan, Big John Studd, Iron Sheik days, but I'm kind of out of it now. So I think I'm going to, I'm just going to continue playing basketball and stuff. And they said, well, here's my number, here's my card. If you ever want to try out, give it a try. There's a great school in Atlanta called the WCW Power Plant, and I can tell you how to get in there. And at this point, I was over the whole wrestling thing. I went from liking professional wrestling, but then once I hit puberty, girls and Sega Genesis took over, and that was it.
So you probably didn't even know who Alex Wright was.
I didn't. I did not know who Alex Wright was, nor Barry Houston.
Right.
But two decent guys, two guys in shape, and honestly, at the time, I was always one of these guys who, I would look at other guys and say, wow, he's doing that, I can do that, and that's kind of the impression I got, because physically, I think at that time, maybe I was 19, maybe 20 years old, maybe, and physically, Alex Wright's a big guy and tall and athletically built. But at the time, even at the time, when I wasn't much into working out, I still, I felt like my athletic prowess was equally or better compared to those guys. So and I saw those guys pulling out, and they're driving like Cadillacs and stuff, and I was like, man, maybe I gotta forget about this college budget and stuff, and look into this. But I was always a basketball player at heart. That was my passion, basketball, and I was under the influence, the belief that I was going to make something in my life in basketball. I never thought maybe NBA, but I always thought that maybe playing in Europe or overseas, is a possibility of furthering my basketball career. But anyway, so basically, basically Barry Houston's offering of helping me get into the power plant was kind of a whatever. Thanks a lot, but I'm a basketball player. So they left that night, and later that night at like 4 in the morning, like I said, it was only myself, the cook, and the dishwasher. I'm vacuuming stuff, and I see this kid coming in with a baseball cap on, New York Mets baseball cap. I'll never forget it. And he says to me, "Hey, you got 4 quarters for $1?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So as I'm opening the drawer, I see 2 more guys come in. They both have pipes, and all of a sudden this guy with the Mets hat pulls out a gun and points it at my head, and he's like, "Give me all the money." And I was like, "Man, I don't want nothing," and it was kind of a surreal feeling because I was getting held up, and I was a young kid from Syracuse. I wasn't exposed to any kind of stuff, like all my life, and now in bigger cities when there's more crime and stuff, that's what I ran into. And so when it was all over, they took the money and left. No harm, no foul. And but it kind of, I was like, wow, it blew me away. The cops did all the reports and stuff. I ended up going back to my apartment complex, and I wanted to tell my buddy, he was sleeping for work, and I was like, man, and I was like, I'm gonna wait till he gets up. So I went to the hot tub and pool in my complex there, and who do I see? This guy Barry Houston again, because his girlfriend was staying there. That's where his girlfriend lives, and they were in the pool drinking and messing around, and basically that's where we furthered our talks about the professional wrestling.
Small world.
Small world, yeah.
So how long was it between that meeting and when you actually made the decision to try your hand at wrestling?
Well, when I told him about the story, what happened that night, he was like, wow, and kind of used that as a point, to say, well, look, life is short, do you want to be a Division II basketball player and maybe play in Europe one day and work at Denny's, or do you want to go for it, and he gave me all the information on the power plant. I was like, you know what, the hell with it, because I can't live thinking what if. And so basically the next day they were filming in Universal Studios, and he gave me the whole brief rundown of the power plant, Sarge and all that stuff, and the squats and all that stuff, and the physicalities of it. And so he invited me down to the Universal Studios, and that's when I fell in love. I mean, I went there, and I can remember walking around. I saw Hulk Hogan. I saw Goldberg when he was, just kind of starting. I saw guys like Mr. Perfect. He was one of my idols. Rick Rude. I loved Rick Rude too. All those guys were at the tail end of their careers there in WCW, and I'm seeing all those guys, and I'm thinking to myself, wow. I saw Booker T and Stevie Ray, and I'm just blown away. And that's when it just hit me, and I was like, wow, this is something I want to do. So I talked to Sarge. He was kind of a quiet guy. But he kind of told me, he goes, well, because if you come to this camp in Atlanta, you better be in shape, and he said it pretty sternly. So I was like, of course. But just seeing all these guys, when I was walking out of the Universal Studios, I saw Macho Man pull in his Benz, and I was blown away, and you go from the 80s as a kid that loved wrestling to forgetting about it, but now the resurgence at this time too. Wrestling started, this is the point, I think it was early 98. Wrestling was starting to get big again on TV. This is when the wars were kind of going on. WCW was hot, NWO, and on Monday nights, and I believe WWE was the lesser of the two at the time, but they were bringing up stars like The Rock, the Stone Colds, the guys like that. So it was a very interesting time for pro wrestling, and pretty much I believe that the following month I went to the power plant and tried out for 3 days.
It's just interesting because most wrestlers don't recruit their competition.
No,
usually they try to keep people away.
And that's the thing. Barry Houston told me, he told me, he he paid for my tryout as well.
Oh, wow.
Barry Houston paid for my tryout. Thank you, Barry. Um, and he just, he told me, he said, it was somebody in my point in my career to put me onto the business and got me involved, and I just wanted. He always told me to, if I had the chance to do it, to get somebody else, put somebody else on, and bring a good kid into the business who seemed like he was worthy of bringing in, to go and do it. And he told me he passed the same thing on to me, and that's basically how it happened. So he paid for my tryout. He gave me the whole rundown. I met Sarge, I met all the boys, and relinquished this love for wrestling. And I went to Atlanta, traveled from Orlando to Atlanta, and tried out. I want to say it was September maybe of '98, September of '98, or maybe October of '98, September of '98. Yeah.
So you walk into the power plant. What's your first impression?
So I walk in the power plant, and super nervous, but I was in super good shape as well. So, but just the awe of being in there. There was, I believe, it was 3 or 4 rings in there, and of course, before I went to the power plant, like I got into the wrestling again. I mean, I was religiously buying the magazines for that month and watching the Nitros every Monday, and man, I just it was crazy, and I just wanted to get my foot in the door. I wanted to get on TV. That was my new goal. I almost forgot about basketball. I just said, to hell with it, and so I get to the power plant, and that day, there was probably 22 guys there, and guys of all shapes and sizes, ex-football players, ex-military guys. Really, with no basketball players like myself, but I felt like I had the advantage because I was taller than most, and apart from being, I saw a lot of guys that were steroided up and stuff, that really weren't very mobile, and that's what helped me, because when you're doing squats, and you're doing running, and then squats and push-ups and running and squats, and it just, they try to mentally kill you first, and the way to mentally kill you first is basically by tiring you out. And all these guys that were carrying 20 or 30 extra pounds of water and steroid weight, these guys couldn't keep up. Like after 50 to 100 squats, they're ready to die. And whereas me, I'd do my squats, and yes, it was very, very difficult. But when we go outside and start running, that's when I run like the wind. So I started feeling, it helped me. We do the squats, and then running, it kind of loosened me up. Where for the other guys, it was just the opposite. They do the squats, their legs will tighten up, they're trying to run outside, and it's double whammies. So by the end of the first day, there was myself and 2 other guys left, and so we went from 22 guys to 3 guys.
Who were the other 2?
One guy, his name was Charles. I can't remember his last name, but I remember his gimmick is he was Crack House Charles. Hardbody Harrison put him on, who's now in jail. And the other guy was a Chinese guy who actually ended up staying as well at the power plant. I forget his name as well. It's been so long, but basically at the end of day 2 was myself and 2 other guys, and they stayed like that in day 3 also. So when the training camp got done, I went to Jody Hamilton's office, the assassin, and he sat me down. He said, he goes, I think you're very athletic, and I think you have a decent future in this business. He goes, how would you like to? We'd like to invite you back and and join the camp, basically. And at that point in time at the power plant, that's when at the whole time that my whole group of friends, who I'm still friends with most of them, were all joining the power plant as well. Guys like Johnny the Bull, or Relic now, Alan Funk, or Chi-Chi now, Elix Skipper, God, who else? Chuck Palumbo, Rick Reno, what was his name? Reno. Who else? God, there's so many of them. But basically, that was Sonny Siaki, Mike Sanders. But that was my crew. That was my group, and that's who I became friends with and broke in the business with. And that was pretty much the crew that we had at the time until we got the TV, and it was kind of nice because those guys became my friends, and always, especially in a power plant under the tutelage of Sarge or guys like that, and later Paul Orndorff. It's just difficult. It's very, very difficult. And when you're joining, taking on something new like that, like a first day of school or something, it's always easier to be with a bunch of friends because it makes it a little easier. And that's kind of like my first entrance in the business, myself and pretty much the friends that I made.
How long were you in the power plant before you had your first opportunity on TV?
Well, I had my first opportunity on TV right away, but not in a wrestling sense. What had happened was, as soon as I started the power plant, maybe a month or two in, what they started doing was bringing they took a couple guys, which I believe they sent myself, Elix Skipper, and Mike Sanders, I want to say, to Nitros and Thunders to do basically TV security, basically to do little skits. I can remember, a couple months into the power plant, me getting to fly up to Nitro and doing a skit where, I'm laying on the ground because Hulk Hogan hit me with a garbage can or something, like that to me was incredible because, and right away, for me to shut down a dream of playing basketball, I went from this basketball player into college basketball into, well, I'm not going back to school, Mom and Dad. I'm gonna join wrestling, which actually they banned when I was little because my brother and I used to wrestle and he hit his head on a dresser one time, and so we weren't allowed to know any more wrestling. That had a lot to do with not watching wrestling anymore either. And my parents just weren't big on it, and
well, you must have loved the decision for you not to go back to school. Huh?
Exactly, and more so to become a wrestler, which they knew nothing about. And they only knew what they remembered as children, the trouble we were getting into, the injuries, hitting each other and stuff. Basically that was, to be on TV that quick, even in that form, was, to call my mom and say, hey, tonight I'm going to be on TV, check me out. And it gave them a little more hope in my decision, and everyone, and friends, everybody, and honestly, too, one thing is like, it's kind of like, which we'll get to later, but, like speaking Spanish, like one thing is taking classes in the United States and taking 3 or 4 years of Spanish classes and trying to learn the language. And another thing is just putting yourself right in Mexico, being enthralled in it, and that's basically what happened with WCW. Yeah, I was in the power plant and stuff, but to be there the few months in, to see, there was times in Nitro crowds in front of 12,000 people where I'm sitting right on ringside at the gate, just being wrestling, regular wrestling security. But to watch these matches live, right there, you learn a lot from it, And a lot of guys took me under their wing and took kindly to me, like Kurt Hennig was one of them. I can remember vividly, coming, I think it was Tampa. They'd always party at the hotel bar afterwards, and I'd always like to try and weasel my way into the party, and not just be on the outside looking in. And one time, Kurt Hennig's big thing was the gargle Jack Daniels, and he basically took me under his wing, and he's like, hey, you seem like a good kid and stuff. You remind me a lot of my good friend. He was talking about Rick Rude, and to me that was the biggest honor ever because Rick Rude was one of my favorite characters. One of my only heel characters that I liked, Rick Rude, with his whole gimmick with the dance and the airbrushed pants and stuff. So I gargled a couple shots with Kurt Hennig, and that was the world to me, and that's basically how it started. Coming back and forth, I got in good with Jimmy Hart and guys like that in the office, and basically that's going back and forth like that.
When they put you on TV and like the tag team that you formed with Sean O'Hare, do you think, looking back on it, it was too early, or do you?
Well, even before that, we did my first TV was with Chuck Palumbo. Meanwhile, when this all was going on, I kind of had my in now, like talking to all these guys and stuff, and little by little, being on the road, it was like I felt like I was one of the boys, while learning at the power plant. So the more I learned in the power plant, the more I learned how to wrestle, the more comfortable I felt being around these guys, because in their presence, like I was horrible. I was horrible at first. And, as I got better, I learned to do a couple good things, like throw drop kicks or do this or do that. And these guys helped me out more. So Chuck Palumbo and I on the side, we started creating a tag team we called ourselves the Soul Surfers. It was more his idea. He's a San Diego boy. But I liked it. I thought Chuck Palumbo was great. He was tall, good shape as well. And so I basically, him and I started making this little tag team called the Soul Surfers, which we do in Independence in Atlanta. We had a chance. And then when I would go, once we felt like we were getting good enough where we could maybe be on TV and not look like the complete shits, we can we say shits?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Well, if I slip up on a swear word from time to time, and so basically we kind of created this tag team, and then I had the basic in. I'd go to TV every week, and I could hand in photos, ideas, storylines, and the more I got around these guys, the more they accepted these ideas. So finally, Chuck Palumbo and I did a photo shoot, and we made up this little binder of photos, and I went to Nitro that week, and I gave the pictures to Jimmy Hart, and Jimmy Hart said, "Wow, these are great, baby," and Monday, of course, was Nitro. Tuesday was the Thunder taping, and then Wednesdays usually they had TV tapings, and I believe Rock Hill is close to here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rock Hill, North Carolina. On Monday, Jimmy said, "This is great. We got to bring you guys to TV. Where's Chuck Palumbo right now?" And I said, "He's at the power plant." He's like, "Let's get him up here. Let's have you guys do a match on Wednesday." And I was like, "Oh my God!" I called Chuck Palumbo, told him we have a match, and we had a match against a tag team called Disorderly Conduct. And honestly, it was the drizzling shit. It was horrible. It was horrible, horrible, horrible. We weren't ready. We were really, really green. It was a big wake up call. But at the same time, it was good to get that out of the way, and because from that point on, I knew exactly what we had to do in order what we needed to be in as far as TV talent, and probably about, even though that happened, they still had some promise in all the guys of the power plant, because the power plant before the resurgence of all of us, we all got contracts. The power plant was kind of a prestigious school, but no one really came out of it. They'd always say that the Big Show came through there. He didn't. He was there for a little bit and he trained. They say Gilbert came down there for a couple days, discovered the jackhammer and the spear, and that was pretty much it. Other than that, who would really come out of the power plant and gotten a chance? Not many guys. You know what I'm saying? They had a tag team called High Voltage, which they got a little burn for a while. Lash LaRue was there. He was getting a little TV time. And Mike Sanders, too, got a little TV time as well. But besides those guys, the power plant was kind of a fluke, a joke. I mean, a school, you go and pay money, and you go through all this grueling crap for TV, for TV interviews and magazine interviews, how stressful and strenuous and vigorous the workouts were with WCW. But who really ever excelled and they ever got the TV? So I guess WCW at that time, maybe in beginning of '99, that's when the decline started. They started going downhill, whereas WWE or WWF at the time started coming up. And the roles were reversing a little bit. And basically that they took the power plant as maybe the garden of seeds that could grow into stars. And in April of 1999 is when they all signed us. They signed first they signed Chuck Palumbo and I, then they signed Sonny Siaki, Alan Funk, Elix Skipper, Rick Reno, amongst a couple others.
When you say signed, you mean like multi-year?
No, well, they signed us training. Basically, I signed a contract. I think I was making $750 a week, and we're still at the power plant, but that was kind of like they made the power plant more official. Before guys would come in at 9, train till 11 or 12, 1 o'clock. But then when they started paying guys, that's when it became more of a, like a job. And that's when they brought Paul Orndorff in. We moved power plants from the old power plant to where more of the offices were over. I think I remember one time, if you remember when DX was outside WCW, that building, that particular building right there is where the new power plant was, and state of the art. They built some, the facility was beautiful. That's where we started training under the tutelage of Paul Orndorff, and that's when it became basically a job.
Let's jump ahead to being on TV and the tag team role you were in.
Okay. Well, at that time, shortly after that whole group was signing, Sean O'Hare eventually came. And Sean O'Hare came in as he's 6'6", 275 pounds, and very, very acrobatic, doing backflips and stuff. And he signed very quickly. He was very green, but like him and I became friends as well. And we ended up becoming. I was kind of like a tag team prostitute. I was jumping from tag team partner to tag team partner, and I became. Me and Sean O'Hare created a little tag team, and again, they liked our style. They liked the idea of two young guys that flew around a little bit. They thought maybe, even though we were green, they gave us a chance on TV as well. And my first Nitro was with Sean O'Hare on June 26, year 2000. That was my I know that date because that was my birthday, my 23rd birthday. And we wrestled in Des Moines, Iowa, versus Juventud Guerrero and Rey Mysterio on Nitro, and they put us over. We won. So, and I actually just watched that match probably a few weeks ago, and it's crazy to watch that match. Like I had no idea. When it happened, it was a blur, but watching the TV, watching what was going on in that match, it was crazy, and the fact of wrestling two guys like Rey Mysterio and Juventud Guerrero, two super fast guys and lucha libre stars, and that's when it all began. We had a good match, and Sean O'Hare and I were on TV ever since.
And eventually they moved you to tag team with Stasiak.
Yeah,
Sean O'Hare. What caused the change?
Well, Sean O'Hare and I had a good tag team run, and parallel with that, Sean Stasiak, we were with Chuck Palumbo as a tag team, and we both had good tag team runs. We were in the same group, the Natural Born Thrillers, and when WCW was kind of at its end, I think maybe Bischoff or some other potential owners came in. And they kind of changed everything, and the office kind of changed things, and basically my tag team, Sean O'Hare was more. Maybe I was a better technical wrestler, but he was a freak of nature. He did that swanton dive. He did backflips off the top rope. He kind of one that stood out in our tag team more, as Chuck Palumbo stood out in their tag team a little more. So they ended up putting those two guys together, and put me and Stasiak together, and then we ran an angle with them, and they ended up beating us. And it was kind of the way it went, and I understood because I was still young, very, very green, and still very underdeveloped. I was at the time I was 23, going on 24, but I was still very underdeveloped. And whereas Sean O'Hare was a little older than I, he had a major league body, freak of nature body, and Chuck Palumbo stood out in his tag team as well. They put them together, and they put me together with Stasiak. But nonetheless, that's how it went.
Were you at the last WCW show, Panama City?
I sure was. I was actually the first match out. I wrestled Jason Jett. Is that his name? Jason Jett. Some indie worker, and I was the first match out, and that was some crazy stuff. Panama City. It was the last show. The WWE got there. Shane McMahon and them got there. And
did you have any knowledge that Shane would be?
Yeah,
that
we kind of knew what was going on, and the fact that the buyout was going down, but the fact that WC, that whole thing, the Monday Night War, it came to a head, and basically it was over with. The WCW was taken over by WWE, and everybody, including myself, you really didn't know what was going to go on from there, because after that Panama City show, we all went on a hiatus for like maybe 3 months, 4 months, and 3 months. Let's see, that Panama City show I believe was in March, and I think maybe a couple months we were on hiatus because the next time any of the WCW guys came around was actually they sent, and this was cool because when we were in hiatus, and who knows what was going to happen. They came up with a group of 10 of us. It was kind of like a chosen group. It was myself. Thank God I was a part of that. Sean Stasiak, Chuck Palumbo, Sean O'Hare, DDP, Booker T, Buff Bagwell, Shane Helms, Stacy Keebler, Tori Wilson, Canyon. I believe that might be it. And Hugh Morris, the guys that they flew to WrestleMania 17 in Houston, and they put us up in the boxes and stuff, and that's when I realized that, wow, this is incredible, because I remember looking out, and when we came to the box, I remember looking outside of a curtain and seeing that crowd in the Astrodome. I mean, 67,000 people, and and for my time in WCW, I've seen crowds, big, but when we went overseas, but the crowds are getting a little less there in WCW towards the end. We started filming both shows at the same time, and just the crowd sucked. There was no attendance, and to go from that, what I was more accustomed to as a young wrestler, to opening up a curtain and seeing 67,000 people, I was like, oh my God. And I was included in that. I was in that group that kind of made it to the next. The WWE had plans of doing stuff with.
Where were you in your contract? I mean, was
We still were under deals. They bumped those up a little bit when we got.
But
the
it wasn't
TV.
a weekly deal anymore. You were on a.
No, we were still getting weekly. They honored our weekly deals. They kept them, and then eventually, what happened was when WWE took over, they basically honored that contract during our hiatus, and then when we got on the road, eventually when we started doing the invasion angle, they structured deals differently.
Okay. Well, what was going through your mind in those months where were you the first one on TV with the Alliance? In that first wave? Because
Yeah,
I was thinking
that first
DDP
wave.
was one of the first.
Yeah,
guys.
our whole group, we did the whole invasion deal. That all went down. The whole invasion thing. That was super green. Like I said, it was Booker T, DDP, Buff Bagwell, Shane Helms, myself. Most of the Natural Born Thrillers, Stasiak, Palumbo, myself, and O'Hare, and a couple girls. And they just kind of started filtering us out on TV. And I think the whole big invasion came to a head in Atlanta, Georgia, when basically it was a 5-on-5 match. It was myself, Sean O'Hare, Palumbo, Stasiak, and somebody else versus like Bradshaw or APA, Billy Gunn, Big Show, and somebody else. It was 5-on-5, and it was in Atlanta. We were wrestling 5-on-5, and I remember Big Show had me in the corner. That was the first time I'd really met Big Show as well. And man, I remember him giving me a chop. It hurt so bad. And we were fighting and everything, and then all of a sudden, that's when ECW came out of the stands with Paul Heyman, and they got in the ring, and it looked as if like what's going to go on, and then all of a sudden they basically joined our alliance, and we beat the crap out of those WWE guys, and that's when the whole alliance began. The invasion began.
But they ended up sending you down to HW.
Very, very, very shortly afterwards.
Did they say anything to you why?
No, I kind of knew. I knew by the performance of my work. I had some matches where they weren't horrible matches, but they weren't by any standards what WWE was looking for as far as work rate. And I had no problem with that. I wasn't one to say, oh, I should be, because I saw right away that, maybe when they were teaching us in the power plant all these squats and all these calisthenics, maybe they should have showed us, how to work. And and that's the one thing I had against the power plant is I really didn't learn anything. I didn't learn anything from Paul Orndorff, and I really didn't learn anything from Sarge. Tons of respect for Sarge, but Paul Orndorff was in his office, most of the day. He didn't teach us anything. And Sarge, was his way of teaching was very, do it again. And when you land on the back of your head, practicing something, the last thing you want to hear is do it again, and someone's shouting at you, do it again. I liked more like learning at my own pace, especially this wrestling. We're getting paid to train. We're in a school for eight hours. Why do you have to do it again? So I wasn't, even though I came from the power plant, I don't have a lot of great things to say about the power plant because they really didn't teach us how to work. I mean, could I do more push-ups than everybody else? Yes. Could I run faster than everyone? Yep. Could I do more squats? Yes. But it comes down to working. It comes down to just pure working, and that's why I accepted. When they sent me to John Laurinaitis, the director of talent for WWE, told me, we're going to send you and. They sent a couple other guys too down to HWA in Cincinnati. I kind of understood. You know, I understood, and I knew it wasn't the end of anything, but it's just, you know, I felt like I was starting over again.
It wasn't open much longer after they sent you down there. They ended up closing HWA down. But well, what were your
No,
first?
actually, what happened was that they stayed open for a while, and they were still a talent.
Weren't you
They were
only
still
there about 6 months?
less. I was there less. I started working there a little bit. And I can tell you right around the time I want to say I'll give you a date. It was around September of 2001 when the 9/11 happened. Because I was in Cincinnati with Mike Sanders at the time, and shortly after that, they didn't shut down right away. They still were a developmental league of WWE, but they moved myself and Sean O'Hare over to OVW, 90 miles down the highway in Louisville, and that camp at that time was incredible. I mean, I'll give you a list of the names who was there
Well,
at the
before
time.
you do that, though, tell me what your memories are of Heartland. And I think Les Thatcher was still heavily involved in the training.
Yeah, yeah. I liked Heartland. I liked Heartland. They had a group of more advanced guys, and they had a group of local guys, and it was cool because for me, I kind of consider myself, it came easy for me, and I feel like sometimes people, I may not, maybe some of the fans and the internet and stuff never gave me a fair shake or never had great things to say about me because I kind of took the white collar route, It came very, very easy for me, I mean, I'm a guy who's 6'6", I'm very athletic and stuff, and things came easy, so training and stuff when I was in HWA, I actually started learning, it was kind of starting over and learning the right way now, and Les Thatcher, he's an old timer, he has a lot of valuable knowledge to give, I basically took this more of I took it more calmly. I took step by step. I wasn't trying, and I remember in WCW in the power plant, I think I looked at TV as being like, okay, if I can do this super move, I can get on TV. If I can do a moonsault, I'm going to get on TV quicker. But WWE and the beginning stage of HWA, they kind of taught me, Les Thatcher taught me about the basically less means more. No pun intended, less means more. Just basically, if you get a headlock, work the headlock. If someone's kicking you, sell that area. Go stages, levels. There's different levels. It's not just a match isn't just throw up. It's just little by little. And I really I like Les. Like I can say he taught me more than what Paul Orndorff taught me, or what Sarge taught me, and. The group of guys there were good too. There's some local guys mixed in with developmental talent and stuff, and we made a good mix. And it got me kind of. It took me through the steps of what everything I skipped over went from basically training for 6 months, going to TVs and making money on the side at TV security and Nitro and Thunder and stuff, and just signing a contract and getting paid to train. I skipped all the things a lot of the wrestlers have to go through and accomplishing their dreams. And that's training, learning how to work, and learning the necessary steps in this business. And that's where I just kind of started with Les Thatcher.
And like you mentioned, you moved quickly over to OVW.
OVW, and that's when I really progressed, and I felt, or I started understanding how to work, and because I was always athletic and do any moves and stuff, but you got to be able to work, and when I came to that camp, at that time, Brock Lesnar was there, Batista was there, John Cena was there, Randy Orton was there, Charlie Haas, Shelton Benjamin, now me and Sean O'Hare. Who else they have? Man, well, I mean that's a sufficient group of names, but I mean that tells you right there. I mean, and then mixed in, Jim Cornette and Danny Davis, they ran OVW and their TVs, and that's where I learned the next step. Like putting all this training and stuff and applying it to TV. And Jim Cornette was great. He flies off the handle a lot, but
What's your best story of Jim Cornette flying off on the handle to you?
Well, it wasn't really on. It really, I'll give two stories. One, I remember before OVW TV. Everyone was parked in the back. The old OVW school was like a little warehouse and stuff, and it was so everyone was parked in back. And Jim gets pretty passionate about his TVs and stuff. And something happened, or someone messed up a pre-tape, and I remember Sean O'Hare and I were laying in my car, just kind of waiting. My feet were up, on the steering wheel and stuff. We're just waiting, and all of a sudden, I hear. Can I swear?
Yeah, absolutely.
He goes, I hear, God damn it, fuck, and all of a sudden, I looked to the right, and he threw a chair through a window of the other warehouse. This other warehouse, I don't even know if they owned it. He's like, God damn it, he threw that, and I was, oh my God. And that's when I got my first taste. But my second taste is when they put me with Lance Cade. He ended up later on in OVW put me with Lance Cade, and I'm a big hip hop fan, and Jim Cornette's not. And I remember one day he said, "Yeah, I got some new music for you and Lance." And I said, "Yeah, well, what is it?" And he's like, "It was something like AC/DC or something." I said, "Oh, I really didn't sell it that much." I was like, "Oh, cool." And he's like, "What?" Because it's not fucking hip hop. Because it's not fucking rap. Fuck. I hate fucking rap. I wish I could pour fucking sugar. I wish I could pour sugar on all the rappers and put. He said, how do you state it? He goes, I wish I could pour honey all over the rappers and pour ants, fire ants on them. He goes, I don't try to be Chinese. And so basically, that was my Jimmy Cornette story. But apart from that, maybe he goes off flies off the handle sometimes, but Jim Cornette's a mastermind of the business, and that's why, even though probably he couldn't conform to a lot of situations, the guy knows his wrestling, and there in OVW is when I learned to basically take my training and what I'm learning in this schools and stuff in the HWA or the OVW or even the power plant, and applying it in the ring to storylines and being part of a storyline and angle and stuff.
You battled through a lot of injuries with OVW too. You probably would have made it to WWE TV faster if you didn't have to go through some of that. But talk about some of the injuries that you went through.
Basically, two injuries. I remember I was wrestling in a match with Shelton Benjamin and John Cena in a three-way match, and I did something where I used to do a springboard clothesline, and what happened? I did a springboard clothesline, and I landed. And I think when I was wrestling, my knee pad came down a little bit. This is when you're young, you can basically throw on a little knee pad and don't even warm up and stuff, and you just go out there and start wrestling and stuff. And I had this little knee pad on, and it moved down my leg a little bit, and I did a springboard clothesline. I remember just ramming my knee into the mat, and I felt like a little pop, and I kind of partially tore my meniscus, and I hurt my PCL behind my knee, and that kind of sidelined me for three months. And that really wasn't the injury that that injury that happened. It was kind of like my first injury in the wrestling business, and it was at that time I think it was maybe good, because sometimes you can, in an injury, everything you're learning at the time, and OVW it was a lot at once, because now WWE was looking heavily, as you can imagine. I mean, Orton, Cena, Batista, Lesnar, and those, I think they were paying, maybe not Cena and Orton, but I think Batista and Lesnar, those guys kind of had big backgrounds coming in and big hype coming in, so they got paid some more. So WWE is looking at all of us very, very hard and investing money into us. So it was a lot to consume at once, and under Jim Cornette and Danny Davis, I love Danny Davis as well. Jim Cornette's great, but Danny Davis as well. It was kind of like the yin and yang, good and bad. Jim Cornette he'd fly off the handle, and if something he was pissed about, he'd let you know it, but he let you know it with swear words. And Danny Davis is more of the calm, tranquil guy who do all the the video and stuff, and the make sure the TVs went well, but he'd explain to you more in a calm manner, and so at that point in time, that 3-month injury kind of helped me, because I was on the sidelines, but watching, it gave me a kind of a chance to step out of the blur for a second and kind of see everything that was going on. So that happened. And then the second injury was at the. I did some move. I jumped out. I jumped over the top rope onto the ground with sneakers on, and I dislocated my ankle, and that kind of sucked. That kind of held me back because at that point in time, what they were coming up with me for was Evolution. I was going to be in the group Evolution, and I don't think the injuries hurt me. I would have made it to TV faster, yes, but um, I think I still wasn't ready. I'm coming into that Evolution when I came off of my second injury is when they told me their plans. Their plans were to put me.
Who told you these plans?
They told me basically. I want to say Arn Anderson told me. But now, like I said, because they're heavily checking on these OVW guys because they're investing all this money. Every week they'd send after TV, they'd send a guy from the office or a veteran wrestler to come and talk to us and I remember Arn Anderson. He helped me a lot as well. He told me, he said, "Kid, get ready. They got some big plans for you," and that big plan actually spun into them flying me up to Stanford. I think the creative team and Stephanie McMahon told me, that they had plans of putting me in this group with Triple H, Ric Flair, Randy Orton, and eventually myself as a fourth member in Evolution.
You actually shot the vignette.
Shot the vignettes. I remember in Dallas, TV in Dallas, us taking a 2 or 3 hour break from TV off. We went to some countryside where it was like a hill. It was like a hill, and where they shot from here. So when we come up over the hill, you can see our silhouettes come over little by little as a kind of a group of 4 group, and shot a lot of vignettes and stuff. And you can imagine, a group with Triple H, Ric Flair, and then Orton became one of my best friends, and him and I actually became good friends because he hurt himself as well. I believe his ankle or his shoulder in a match with the Dudleys early on in his career. He not where he was really full, but when we started doing some TVs, he hurt himself, and I remember making a call to him when I got hurt. I called him up and see how he was doing. That was our common point, our common ground was our injuries, and talking about that, and then the fact that we were going to be part of the same group. We became even better friends, and hung out and stuff. So, it was.
So, who ultimately made the decision to pull you out of Evolution?
Well, what happened was, I was in the group shooting the vignettes, and the time was coming. Orton did a fantastic job as the third member. So then, when they wanted to make it more a group of 4, groups always work at 4, like the 4 Horsemen and stuff. So they wanted to bring in a 4th member, and they started, I believe, hyping it up on TV, like who's going to be the next member. And all along, I knew it was me, of course. And I shot all the vignettes, but God, I can remember it, and it was almost like slow motion. It was like a nightmare because I saw exactly what was happening, and it's exactly what happened. What happened was they started hyping it up so much that I remember we were watching Raw, and they were doing a poll like, who's going to be, go to WWE.com, and who's going to be the 4th member, and they had, choices like Kevin Nash, or I want to say Jericho, and a couple other 3, 4 other tests, 2, 3 other big names. And I was thinking, like, wow, they're hyping this up so much. I'm the 4th member, Mark Jindrak, who basically had a brief stint in WCW, and then I've been in hiatus from OVW for a while, out of the eye of the public for a while. I'm thinking, man, they're hyping this up so much. Are they gonna be upset when they find out that it's Mark Jindrak, And I was worried, and I had every right to be worried because that's exactly what happened. They hyped it up so much and made it such a big deal out of it. They kind of hyped me out of it, And I remember in Madison Square Garden, someone told me Vince wants to see you. Vince McMahon wants to see you, and I went to Vince's office, and he basically told me what I just told you. This is. At this point in time, it may not be good to bring you in as a 4th member. I love your work. I have very high hopes for you, but I think bringing you in a different capacity is going to be better for your career. If we bring you in right now as a 4th member, they might just, spit you out, and at this point in time, I was in OVW for all that time, you know, HWA and then OVW. I thought to myself, well, you know what? Maybe I'm not joining Evolution, but, you know, how great is it for Vince McMahon to take the time to call me and explain to me that, you know, what had happened, and also basically tell me that he said, we'd like to start you off more as a babyface and put you in a tag team. And that's when they put me with Lance Cade. At that point, Garrison Cade.
And you had worked with him, you know, OVW.
OVW towards the end point, yeah.
Yeah,
With
just to give it some time frame when we're doing this interview, because there may be people watching this 5 years from now. We're just less than 3 weeks away from Lance Cade passing. And one of the questions I had for you are just some of your early memories of Lance Cade.
well, first and foremost, a great worker. You know, very comparable to like a Barry Windham or someone very reliable. My height, my build, you know, 6'6", 255. Very good worker. Nice guy. Never caused any problems. You just knew he would have a spot. You know, that was not. I failed to mention him. He was another guy that was in the OVW camp as well, and along with the Bashams as well. The Basham brothers were in there too. Just a camp, and he was one of the guys who, you know, Lance Cade. My early memories of him was a nice guy. You know, I remember our common ground. He played some basketball. He was from Nebraska. He played some b-ball as well, and he basically, to me, he was reliable. You know, when I watched him in the ring, or when I tagged with him, reliability. You know, he was very reliable. Whereas, you know, Sean O'Hare sometimes. As spectacular as he was, you know, he'd miss spots, he'd forget some stuff, and he was very green. Whereas Lance Cade, you know, like, and I think that's sometimes my problem was, you know, like sometimes I'd worry more about holding the weight of some of the tag team with like Sean O'Hare or something, because I knew he was a little greener and stuff, and I was green myself. But with Lance Cade, I could just count on doing my own thing because I knew he was going to be all right.
Mm-hmm.
But just a nice guy. Just really nice guy, just period.
And, you know, recently he's had his share of dealing with his own demons. Is that the person that you remember at all, or did something change from your memories when you
No,
were
you
talking
know, honestly, I still don't know what was the verdict of death. You know, I mean,
I'm not sure the autopsy's come out yet, but you know,
I'm not going to make any statement. I mean, I'm not going to make any statement, but I'm thinking it's leaning more towards the pills and the over, you know, the prescription medications, you know, like the sleeping pills, the pain pills and stuff. I'm thinking that was the cause, and that I didn't know that part of him. You know, like I remember traveling on the road with Orton and stuff, and you know, we'd like to party and drinks here and there, but he was more of he was a family man. You know, he had a wife, and not yet, he didn't have kids yet at this time, but you know, he was more always grounded, you know, bed early, wake up early, gym. And, you know, we went to the gym too, but 4 or 5 in the afternoon after we woke up at 11 or 12 in the morning. And, you know, that wasn't part of his life. That whole demon part wasn't part of his life. That wasn't, he seemed like a pretty straight guy and very little emotional problems. And that's why it's kind of weird to see that happen, you know, and at such a young age.
How about some memories of getting back to WWE TV, doing the tags? You know, I don't want to go through the whole list of everybody you've wrestled, but you did wrestle many matches with Les Resistance, the Dudleys. Just some overall general memories of that time period.
Good. It was, like I said, it was good. It was a good experience starting off with Lance in the tag team. We wrestled guys like La Resistance, Dudley Boys. Guys like Lance Storm, Val Venus, and stuff like that. We had a regular run against, you know, like Hurricane Helms and Rosie, you know. So, and we had great tag matches. You know, I think our tag team was a little maybe bland. You know, we're Cade and Jindrak. You know, and it was kind of bland. I felt it was kind of bland. They could have put a little more pizzazz on us. But as far as matches go and TV exposure and TV time, I mean, our work rate was good too. I mean, we were working. I was really proud of my work at the time. You know, like I said, like Lance Cade is a great worker, and when you're wrestling a tag team day in and day out against guys like Dudley's, guys like La Resistance and stuff. I mean, we're pumping out good matches and having a great time, you know. So, um, but basically, as far as getting over, we really didn't. We were reliable, you know, wrestlers on TV, and you know WWE could build some storylines around us and stuff, but we weren't like huge money makers. I don't think we were putting a lot of asses in the seats.
After some time as a tag team, they switched at WrestleMania, and you were drafted to SmackDown.
Yep.
Did you look at this as one of the kiss of death, or maybe as a new opportunity to establish yourself as
No,
a
I
singles?
looked at a new opportunity because you know they wanted they like I said I was doing well and as a tag team we were doing well and you know and they wanted to split us up and they moved me over to SmackDown to shake things up a little bit and no I looked at it as a chance to get away from the tag team. I've been in a tag team my whole life, you know, so now I have a chance to be in the singles role and that's what happened. But you know my first character was the Reflection of Perfection, which I enjoyed. I kind of liked. I enjoyed the Reflection of Perfection. I know people compared it to the Narcissist with Lex Luger and stuff, and shortly after me was Chris Masters, which is kind of like another type thing. Um, but the Reflection of Perfection never got any really TV time. You know,
Why did they pull Teddy Long from the package? I think Teddy Long was initially part of your.
Teddy Long was my manager, and you know we spent like 2 or 3 months in a row on Velocity, you know, and great matches on Velocity and stuff. But again, it's Velocity. I was never on SmackDown, and that's when I started thinking that was the kiss of death, you know, and because I thought, and you know, Teddy Long was with me, and then they pulled him away, and I think they made him a commissioner or something, and basically they put me with Kurt Angle and Luther Reigns. And in Kurt Angle, Luther Reigns, that's what I thought, you know, like another opportunity. Like, okay, now I'm getting a rub with like a Kurt Angle, but now basically the way it was set up was Kurt Angle was number one man, his right hand man was Luther Reigns, and then I was kind of like the third man of the totem pole. You know, it sucked, you know, and again, I had, you know, now I'm on SmackDown all the time. And not very much Velocity, and I'm wrestling guys like Undertaker, like Eddie Guerrero, you know, guys of that caliber, Rey Mysterio on SmackDown. But I was always the guy doing the job, you know. I was a whipping boy of my team. I was a 6'6", 250-pound whipping boy. But TV time, exposure. I made good money and stuff at the time.
Who did you travel with at that time?
At the time, Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio.
They talked to you a lot about Mexico at all? Or?
Well, I remember making jokes all the time. I was very, very good friends with him, you know, and I always like sitting in the back seat in cars. I don't know why, but even though I'm tall, they always offer me the front seat. But I like sitting in the back seat, and I'd sit in the back seat and listen to these guys like go from town to town. They'd call their families and be speaking Spanish, like, you know, hola mijo, you know, and I'd always make those little hola mijo, you know, and do little imitations of Eddie and Ray to their faces, and they'd laugh about it. And you know, I never ever thought, I knew nothing about Mexico at all. I knew absolutely nothing about Mexico City. You know, to tell you the truth, I mean, I knew about like guys wearing wrestling masks and stuff. But I didn't think it was that big a deal in Mexico, you know, the whole professional wrestling thing. So, but it was kind of weird. My two best friends at the time and were Mexican guys in SmackDown, you know, and I became very good friends with them and their families and stuff, and that was my first introduction to the Mexican culture.
Have any distinct memories of the opportunities of working with Undertaker?
Yeah, Undertaker. He's you know, if anyone who doesn't know, he's the godfather of the locker room in WWE. He's the man. He's probably the most respected guy in the locker room, and rightfully so. He's done everything. He's big on the young guys. You know, he'd always take you know, guys like Orton, myself, you know, Lance Cade aside. You know, I remember we were in Japan one time. He bought us we were in Hard Rock Cafe. He bought a bottle of champagne, and we drank, you know, just kind of like the boys, you know, and took us under his wing, and wrestling against like Undertaker, I had a chance to wrestle him because Luther Reigns was in an angle with him, and I got mixed up in being part of that, so I got to work him a couple times. It actually helped me in WWE because even though I did the job and it was a basic standard 6-7 minute match, our 6 or 7 minute match was good because, when I was kicking the shit out of them and stuff, like I showed intensity, I was aggressive, and they like that kind of stuff. They don't like guys to sit back and kind of let things go by. They like guys to take an opportunity. You're in the ring with Undertaker, the most notable wrestler, besides Hulk Hogan in the world. You're in the ring with him, turn it up, and I turned it up, and because of that, I think I started because of that, because then Luther Reigns wrestled Undertaker on a pay-per-view, I believe No Mercy, and he kind of just, it was a shitty match. He blew up. It was a horrible match, Luther Reigns, and what started happening was, because Luther Reigns and I were a tag team also, and again he was a more stronger figure as I was than I would, same as Sean O'Hare and me in WCW. That was happening again, but because of my hard work with Undertaker and showing him that I was aggressive, and I started becoming that number one guy in the tag team, which eventually was me. When Luther Reigns and I broke up, I'm the one who got the better of that angle.
Did you feel like Luther, because this is his criticism, is that he really didn't have a love for wrestling? This is kind of a stomp on his, potential to being an actor.
I think he was. I think he had love for wrestling. And obviously he had the build for wrestling, but I don't think he was an athlete. Period. I mean, I think some point, I'm not saying, a lot of times in history, I'm not talking about work rate or everything, because Hulk Hogan was never a great worker. I don't think John Cena was a great worker. It's his character, and he had a lot of character. He's very, very good on the mic, very, very, very believable. Talking about, this is my yard, this isn't your yard, Undertaker, this is my yard. But then when you're talking about this is your yard, but then you get in the ring and you blow up after 2 or 3 kicks and punches, it's not your yard anymore. You're blowing up, and I think that was just it. He just wasn't an athlete. He's more of a bodybuilder, actor, personality than an athlete. At some point you got to bring a little athleticism to the table. Especially when you're going in the ring against guys, against Undertaker and stuff. He might be a big guy, and but he goes.
A few months later, you left the WWE. Was it one of those things where the writing team had nothing for you, or was it? Did you ask for your release?
The kiss of death was after basically. I felt like a utility man. Then they kind of changed me babyface, and then one week I'd work Booker T as a heel, and then the next week I'd be a babyface. I was like a man without a gimmick of cause. I was handing in different ideas, gimmicks, whatever, every week, just to try and produce something. And basically that time, July of 2005, a few months after WrestleMania, that's kind of like the dead season for WWE, and they let a whole bunch of guys go.
You went over to Japan, and some other interviews that I've read that you did some research. You didn't particularly think of that period as your best work, or maybe you didn't think of Japan as fondly as
I didn't.
some
I didn't
others.
like it. I didn't like it.
It seems like it'd be great for you. They love the big American.
Yeah, but it seemed like in Japan, it was is their country, their wrestling, and the Japanese people, some of the things I do, it's kind of like basketball. Maybe fundamentally, I'm not the best basketball player in the world, or wrestling, maybe I'm not the most technical wrestler in the world, but there are things that I do playing basketball or in the wrestling ring that blow people's mind. Like in Japan, Matt Morgan used to pick a guy up by his back of his knees as high as he could, and I would stand behind and super drop kick him. That's a drop kick 9.5 feet in the air, and it wasn't some drop kick where I was like this. I was parallel. So you take Matt Morgan and then a guy, and I'm drop kicking guys like that. The Japanese fans are like, wow, like that, and things of that sort, like in basketball, I could slam dunk ridiculous 360s, reverse dunks, everything, like I made myself stick out, and in Japan I made myself stick out, and I was, a very aggressive wrestler at that time. I can remember too, because I adapted that aggressive style, the strong style of New Japan, but just more so, it seemed like they were never really willing to give that. They give very few and far between guys that push in Japan. Usually what it is you bring in two big guys like Matt Morgan and Mark Jindrak. They beat one tag team, they beat another tag team, they beat another tag team just to lose to Chono and Tenzan or something, and that's the way it seemed to went. And I felt like I wasn't going anywhere. And plus, it was a 2 week tour, 3 week tour, and then back home for a month. I wasn't making any money. I mean, I was making money, but I wasn't making consistent money. I wasn't part of a consistent storyline. It felt like we were just guys that make their top guys look good. To bring in two monsters who do pretty physically great things, and have their top guys beat us. And plus the fact is 13 hour plane rides and stuff, and the language barrier, just it didn't seem like a place I could really excel.
Which is all those things being said. So it's almost ironic that you've had the success that you've had in Mexico, and this is kind of where we switched the interview from Jindrak to Corleone. What ultimately was your in terms of your first exposure to CMLL?
First exposure to CMLL was Ultimo Dragon. Ultimo Dragon. He started, obviously he worked with CML for a long time, probably 20 years, Ultimo Dragon, and in this particular year, 2006, it was right around May, he had an event in Arena, Mexico called Dragon Mania 1, where he brought in some guys, and basically like a WrestleMania type show, but a Dragon show, and he wanted to bring me in, myself, and let me go before that. Johnny Stamboli and Chuck Palumbo, they came to Mexico with Ultimo Dragon as the FBI, full-blooded Italians. So basically, they did one tour in like April of 2006, and then they came back. And then shortly after that, Chuck Palumbo, they ended up re-signing Chuck Palumbo again. So they signed him, and this whole angle of the full-blooded Italians, it was Johnny Stamboli and nobody else. So they wanted another Italian. So basically, Ultimo Dragon called me and said, "Would you want to come in and tag with Johnny?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course. I'd love to try it out." So I came out and tried not only for this Dragon Mania 1, but the night before was a big show the CMLL has every year called the Grand Prix, and basically it's eight foreigners. They bring in foreigners, or the foreigners they have, Japanese guys, versus 8 Mexicans. And man, for you guys who don't know, Arena Mexico is basically the Madison Square Garden of Mexico to them. It's the Mecca. It's the Mecca of lucha libre. It's incredible. I went that particular night. I got a chance to participate in this event in front of CMLL event, and basically 13,000 people. And let me tell you too, the difference of the crowds. 12 or 13,000 people sound like 25 to 30,000 American crowds. They're super loud, super passionate, it's like a soccer crowd, basically.
Yeah, and the Vuvuzelas, which people now know a little more about them from the World Cup. The fans in Mexico have been bringing those for years, which really increases the intensity of the crowd.
Yeah, making noise, the horns, everything mixed in. It was just an unbelievable experience. And what's funny is I came in, I had trunks that said Mark Jindrak all over Mark Jindrak, but I came in and they called me Marco Corleone. And my name's Marco Corleone, but I'm wearing Mark Jindrak trunks and stuff, and that was kind of weird. But immediately I fell in love with lucha libre. Period. That's all I can say. Immediately, walking into that arena and looking around and hearing that kind of noise and being in the ring, and and I was with guys like at that time, Lismar Jr., Dos Caras Jr., who is now Alberto Del Rio, La Park, the original La Parca, the original, stuff like that. The concept, 8 versus 8, and I loved it. And that I did well that Grand Prix, because obviously Mexico is very high flying, very acrobatic, and very fast paced. And that was kind of a thing that kind of killed me sometimes in WWE. I think they wanted me to be more aggressive and more ground and pound, more strong style. But I always loved the, I was such a huge Michael Jordan mark and fan that I always tried doing these pretty top rope, clotheslines and stuff, very Jordan-esque clotheslines, and I was like a basketball player mixed in with wrestling, very acrobatic, fluid, smooth style, and WWE didn't like that very much, and I think that hurt me a little bit, but it didn't hurt me in Mexico. It helped me in Mexico, and for first time in my life, I think my style, my own style, and the way I wanted to go with my wrestling ability, I think helped me in Mexico, because I did well in this Grand Prix. Whereas in the States I do a top rope maneuver, WWE's kind of like, eh. Now in Mexico, people are like, oh, because now it's, you got guys like, guys Rey Mysterio height doing their high flying and doing their dives outside the ring, but now you got a guy that's 6 feet 6 inches, doing that, and doing the same thing those guys are doing it.
I, two different guys I'm going to ask you about specifically in your memories of the match, because they've ultimately end up leading to the hair match. First one was with Universal 2000. Universal Dos Mil.
Universal Dos Mil. He basically is a big clumsy wrestler, big strong farm boy, nice guy, very nice guy, but just a big clumsy, very feared wrestler too. Like probably. Here in the States, maybe Dr. Death or somewhere, Scott Norton. If you get in the ring with those guys, it's gonna be a fucking pretty tough match. Like chops and stuff like that. But that was that type of guy. But very at the same time very clumsy and very dangerous. I got working with him, and one particular night he was supposed to come out and hit me with a chair, and because I used to do this flying move down. The CMLL has a ramp leading to the ring. I created this move called the Superman fly, or the Superman vuelo, where I sprint down the ramp and dive onto my 2 or 3 opponents, because in Mexico it's 3-on-3 many times. And this particular moment, they're building this angle, I'm getting ready to do my fly, and Universal comes out and hits me with a chair, blindsided. I'm figuring you're gonna hit me with a chair. I'm not a pussy or a wimp or anything. Hit me with it. But this idiot hit me at the other end of the chair and hit me right on top of my head and right at the edge of the head, and it split me open. I got 15 stitches, and I've never ever been more angry in my life. I've never ever came out of my shell like this before. I don't know if seeing all this blood all over me, or just because of the stupidity of this guy who's uncoordinated and stuff, or he did it on purpose. Because at this time, I was a rudo, or a bad guy, in Mexico, but the fans were starting to get with me, because how you not gonna like a guy who does a plancha out of the ring, or does this super move that they like? I utilize this ramp in the ring of Mexico, doing these extraordinary moves, and people were starting to get with me. And you got to remember the Latin fans, like there's a lot of girls, and like I don't consider myself a bad-looking guy. No. And I didn't wear a mask, where 80% of the guys do wear masks. And then you take this as the second biggest sport in Mexico, behind soccer. It pretty much is soccer and lucha libre.
And in Arena Mexico, anyways, they have a pretty loud, vocal Rudo crowd too.
Absolutely,
so,
absolutely.
It's a lot of things that people don't understand about it.
So they started getting with it. People started getting with me. So I felt when he came out and hit me with a chair, I felt like it was kind of because I could see a lot of guys I started becoming real hot in the Arena Mexico, and when you're hot, people want to work with you, because that either makes you, if you've got a lot of heat, it's very easy for someone to be a babyface against you, or if you're really over, it's very easy for a guy to be a rudo or get heat on you, and that's what I felt like it was. He hit me with a chair, he busted me open, with a very they say tonto and stupid, clumsy. And he was, I thought he was very clumsy, but more so I thought it was he did it on purpose. So I went backstage, and I was bleeding. I was screaming, and at this point he was cutting a promo in the ring, saying this foreigner can't come here and do this and do that, and building our angle. And I'm glad I didn't, but there was a split second for maybe like 2 or 3 seconds where I felt I was going to just strut back down to the ring and just whip his ass. I envisioned myself punching him until his fucking eyeballs popped out. I mean, it was pretty intense and pretty crazy, to the point where somebody, they saw how angry I was and how I was just standing there, and Paco Alonso has two guys under him. One's called Juan Manuel, and the other guy's called Panico, kind of like the two guys below. I remember them saying, calm down. I told them to shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up. I mean, blood was just squirting out of my head. An edicon, a ring girl, actually passed out. She saw that. She passed out in the back. My girlfriend was Colombian. She's got, at the time, my ex-girlfriend, she's a loudmouth. She saw what happened. She runs backstage, and she's bitching. So, I mean, everything's going on. Somebody actually walked out to the ring and told him, do not come back here. You come back here, he's going to fucking kill you. He's going to fucking kill you. And I would have fucking killed him. And he actually went from the ring and just went right out didn't even go back to the locker room. Of course, he was in street clothes.
Mm-hmm.
He just left. He just left completely. I had a meeting a couple of days later with Paco Alonso, and he explained to me he didn't do it on purpose. He says, you got to understand, these guys are clumsy. Him and all of his brothers are clumsy. Him, Mascherano Dos Mil, Cien Caras, they're all stiff. They're all stiff, clumsy, butches.
It's funny, with the Dynamite Brothers have been a top level team or trio now for 20 years.
Yeah,
it's funny.
Just and
the way you
they're
describe.
completely the shits. They're horrible wrestlers. They're clumsy. And
so how come they've been able to stay at the top for so long?
Well, for that reason, like the with all the high flying and no, don't get me wrong. They very good characters too. They played the part. And in Mexico, sometimes it's not really about work, really. They like characters, and they're scary characters. Like, to the point where, and they're scary because all the things look brutal, because all the things are brutal. And when Universo Dos Mil would give somebody a pile driver, it was a real pile driver. He almost, I think he broke Pedro Aguayo's senior's neck.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that. So, and I know, and those guys were always, when you have a lot of a league where there's a lot of flip, style where it's flipping and flopping and flying and acrobatics, you need that other end too, the guys that are, and those guys were perfect for their time, and yeah, they remained at the top of the heel ladder for a long time, but not because of their work, that's for sure.
So take us to the blow-off match with you and Universal.
Oh, well, first what happened was we had a match, Kenzo Suzuki and myself versus Universo Dos Mil and Shocker on December 16th, 2006. So I had been there on and off in Mexico for like 5-6 months now, and this was like the ultimate match, where I myself and Kenzo Suzuki were to lose our hair. And it's kind of funny because I understood that I was losing my hair, and everything, but Kenzo Suzuki didn't understand. All the way up the match, he had no idea that he was going to lose his hair. For some reason, it was under the impression, because the way it works is it was kind of like an elimination, where first in that match, I think I beat Universal, which knocked him out of the match, and then Shocker beat Kenzo, so it left me and Shocker. So I think he was under the impression that maybe from that point, whoever lost that match was going to lose their hair, but it wasn't. And it was a great match. There was like 15,000 people there. It was your typical two foreigners versus two, loyal Mexicans, and they were for them. But we had a great match, and we ended up losing our hair, which I had the same amount of hair now, so it didn't. As sometimes it can hurt you in Mexico. A lot of times it can hurt you, lose your hair, or you lose your mask. For me, it didn't, because at that point in time, I went back home for about a month, and when I came back, that was my decision. Mm-hmm. Do I live here in Mexico and continue, because I have a storyline now, I have consistent work, or do I just forget about it? And of course I came back. I moved to Mexico, and in January 2007, and then February 2007, they switched me. The people switched me to technical or babyface, because, like I said, the girls started liking me. My moves were my running move was unbelievable. Like I'd pattern myself after like a John Cena. John Cena has this. I use this. You know, like my call it my fly. You know, he's got his FU. I have my running plancha. You know, like I started using what I saw the marketing involved and the character development in WWE, and using it in Mexico, which I sometimes in Mexico it seems like.
Did you get a lot of comparisons to Vampiro, who?
Yes, right
20
away.
years earlier,
right away. It was Vampiro. They
he was kind of an unorthodox,
yeah,
kind of an outsider, but the fans really took to him.
Well, I wasn't really much. I was more personable with the people. You know, like.
I shouldn't say outside, foreigner.
Foreigner, yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think my outside everybody because Vampiro's weirdo. No, I'm joking. Yeah, comparisons right away, and you know, I'll be honest with you. Like I didn't like it. I didn't want to be the compared to Vampiro. I felt like I was a better wrestler than Vampiro, and I felt like I could take it to the next level. You know, like in Mexico. But man, Vampiro was a mega star in the '90s. There, mega, and you know that's what started getting comparisons like that. They switched me to technical, and you know I was a babyface now, and people were taking to me. You know, they were really taking to me, and basically, it seems like in CMLL it was always like the first the boss wants to see where your attitude's at. You know, we lost our hair. But then later on in March 30th, 2007, I had a rematch with Universo Dos Mil, who was a Rudo, Technico. We wrestled each other, and I beat him for his hair, which was my first hair that I won.
And another pretty infamous feud that you had was with Lismark Jr.
Absolutely, Lismark Jr. And honestly, till today, in this Lucha Libre USA League, he's still my arch nemesis. And Lismark was another big name in Mexico. We started a feud as well in 2008, all of 2008, and basically came down to a hair versus hair on October 17th, 2008, where I beat him as well for his hair. But it was cool working Lismark because when I started going back to WCW, when I started with WCW, that's when all the Mexicans were there, like the El Dandies and the Villanos and you know, and Lismark. And I remember Lismark, he's kind of a bigger guy, but doing some pretty acrobatic stuff. So I remember being kind of a fan of Lismark when I was in the power plant, saying, you know, I like this lucha style, you know, but I like this guy in particular because, you know, he was a bigger guy, but doing some cool stuff. And I was like, man, that's very unprecedented, you know. So I kind of worked my style that way, you know. And it's kind of funny, all those years later, that I'd be working an angle with him, you know.
Right.
So.
And I guess completely different type of guy than Universo. I mean, he's
much more smooth and coordinated. You know, he could chew bubblegum and tie a shoe at the same time, unlike Universo Dos Mil.
I'm going to play the name game, and this is unique because I know a lot of people who are watching this as a Mark Jindrak interview may not even know some of these names, but there's very few people that can even tell us anything about these guys because the lucha world's kind of closed off to the U.S. community.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, and we'll talk more about bringing lucha to the U.S. here in a few more minutes, but some of the top-level guys in Mexico, maybe just whatever comes to your mind because you've worked with all of them. Perro Aguayo Jr.
Perro Aguayo Jr., like a Randy Orton type. It's in his blood. Just in his blood. Some things you can't learn as a wrestler. Just some things you just acquire. It's things in your blood. Perro Aguayo Jr. is just like his father.
Yeah, comparing to Randy Orton is an awesome way
Yeah.
to describe him to the people who are probably watching. How about Negro Casas?
Negro Casas, man, he's like the Iron Man. He's still going. In fact, I don't follow CMO as much right now, but he was one of their top Rudos. In fact, I think he won on some internet polls and stuff. I mean, he was like Luchador of the Year, like for CMLL, considered by many in 2009, and he's well over 50 years old. So that's.
Was he more than just a wrestler? Was he a guy in the locker room?
Very, very personable. You know, knew a little English. Take the young guys like a Kozlov, like myself. He worked with Rocky Romero many times in New Japan as a tag team. he a world traveler. You know, he likes the international game,
Mm-hmm.
as I do. You know, in Mexico, he liked going to Japan. He was a real big fan of Japan. He loves Japan, and a good guy, real good guy.
Ray Bucanero.
Ray Bucanero, another guy. I mean, he his wrestling I think was so. We kind of, when I became a technical, I and Shocker were kind of in the same little group, along with Alex Kozlov, kind of like guapos. Um, your average guy. Nothing really jumps out.
Well, he's been pretty successful for about 10 years in Mexico
Yeah,
as a top level
pretty
guy.
successful. Yeah, he's in a group called Guerreros. You know, reliable guy, reliable. You know, he's not gonna give you a 5-star match, but he's not also gonna make the match the drizzling shits either.
I mean, just Averno and Mephisto. You don't necessarily have to separate the two because
Verno Mephisto, solid tag team, solid Rudo tag team, and basically again, like, you know, I wouldn't say they're really big draws, but very reliable guys who always end up in big angles because they're reliable, and again, they're good safe workers. They're not clumsy dudes.
How about Shocker?
Shocker. Problem with Shocker, very charismatic. He was super over in CMLL before. He jumped and went to AAA, and when he came back to CMLL, he just wasn't the same. You know, he wasn't as over anymore. And he tried his hand in TNA, I believe, for a while. He did halfway decent, but he's still there in Mexico. You know, he's got his act together. He dealt with alcohol issues, I believe, for a while, but again, you good guy, reliable, and likes the international style as well. He can work the American style as well. Some guys can't.
Right. We were talking about him before the interview started. Heavy metal.
Shocker?
No, heavy metal.
Oh, heavy metal. I thought you meant have you met him? I thought you said heavy metal. I think he sucks. I can't. In fact, there was 3-4 times where I was at a point where he was gonna get beat up too. He's clumsy. The whole rock and roll tough guy thing. It's all farce. He's a puss. Sorry.
No, that's why we have these interviews. Dr. Wagner.
Dr. Wagner. I'd say probably right now in Mexico, he's the #1 luchador right now in Mexico. Again, you know, the stuff that's in him is in his blood. You know, his father obviously was a great legend. His brother is Silver King, who so they have a great family tradition of wrestling, lucha libre. Good guy. I don't know how he would fare in like in a WWE situation. He's super over in Mexico. His mask, I would say, is top right now in Mexico. Top 3 masks, you know, most recognizable masks. Just a pioneer, you know, family. Another Randy Orton type in his blood.
And the guy that everybody on the internet seems to see through clips and stuff, but they keep him under a pretty tight key, Mystico.
He's super talented. I mean, his moves are so smooth. It's like you know, watching water being poured. It's very fluid, very liquid. You know, people like to compare him to Rey Mysterio. As far as the moves go, Mystico is incredible. But if he wants to one day come to America, he has to learn how to work. He's good at doing moves, but I think he's missing a lot of in between stuff. And I think CMLL made him who he is, gave him the mega push to the point now where they boo him in Reno, Mexico. They boo him. They're sick of him. You know, he's obviously popular because he's a Mexican idol, but he's not over like he used to be over.
A lot of people have criticized him as not being as fan friendly as a guy in his spot should be.
No, he's not. You know, and I can't speak on his behalf because I've never been that over, so I don't know. I've been pretty over there. I'm pretty over there, but I think not to the point where he's like, you know, he's reached this. At one point when I first got there was mega stardom. But yeah, he's not very good with the fans. He's very, and that just comes with time. Sometimes the fans do that to you. I guess I don't know, because I always wonder, how some guys can be so over and such pricks to the fans, the ones that are making them that way. But sometimes, Mexico's a third world country, and sometimes, there's not a lot of couth or tact and things. You know what I'm saying? Like here in America, sometimes if somebody notices over there in a restaurant that you're a wrestler and you're eating your burger or something, they may wait till you finish to come get an autograph or something. It's not like that in Mexico. It's just, it's, and maybe that turned him a different way. I don't know, but yeah, no, he's not very good at fans.
Who would be, like, I guess, the locker room leader at CMLL? At least during your time.
My time locker room leader.
People talk about Undertaker being a locker room leader in WWE. Who would be the equivalent in CMLL?
I'd have to say a Negro Casas. A Negro Casas would be the Undertaker type guy, very respected, and very respected for many reasons, for what he's done in the past and what he's still doing. Sometimes I'll be honest with you, like some old timers will try to give you some, advice and do it this way or do it that way, but the wrestling business changed in so many ways. Working a headlock for 25 minutes will get you booed and boring chants out of the arena nowadays. You know what I'm saying? For someone to tell you to work, do that. Like Undertaker and like Negro Casas, I think the respect is so high and the locker room leadership so high is because not only have they done it, they're still doing it and they've evolved. You know what I'm saying? And I think they're the basic standard of what I think every young wrestler should look at and see what exactly they've done to stay, not only stay afloat and not be extinct, but to keep progressing as one of the best.
And I'm going to take Dos Caras Jr. out of the equation just because he's already started with WWE. But which guy from CMLL or AAA in your time there would you think would make the easiest transition to U.S. wrestling and be successful?
Okay, well, we'll start with CMLL. I'd have to say, CMLL, Shocker. Shocker knows his style. He works his style. Man, it's a hard transition. Because Mexican Lucha Libre is so much different. I had a hard transition at first, changing the Mexican Lucha Libre because it's so different. Gosh, it's a good one. Say Shocker. There's some guys in CMLL you may or may not know the names. There's guys like, one guy's name is Tejano Jr. His father Tejano was a wrestler. There's another guy called Terrible. These guys are kind of like bigger guys who can, like when I worked with them in CMLL, we could go a little American style sometimes, and they'd be cool with it. You know what I'm saying? With Mexican wrestling is very like black and white. Either it's there's a lot of heat or there's a lot of shine. It's one way or the other. American wrestling is a little more back and forth. And I think those guys could work. A guy named Terrible Tejano Jr. In AAA, maybe a guy like maybe a chess man, same type of guy, good build but still fairly mobile, and work is the work. Guys like that, the work is clean. It's believable. It's not some shit that comes out of Mexico is really fake looking.
It's said that Wagner may be blacklisted by CMLL because of the way he jumped to AAA. Do you think you're under the same thing? The way when you jumped from CMLL, I think you had a booking the day that you made the surprise switch to AAA.
I talked to Paco Alonso, the owner, leading up to that, and the problem with that, the whole situation was when I was having this whole feud with Lismark. At that point in time, Alex Kozlov jumped to AAA. Then actually first Rocky Romero jumped to AAA. And then Alex Kozlov jumped to AAA. Those are my two best friends, the guys that roll. They all know that we're like three amigos, you know what I'm saying? And when those guys two jumped, CMLL was almost sure that I was going to jump. So from that point, October of 2008, when I had that hair versus hair match. I beat Lismark for his hair versus hair, but if you watch the match for the hair versus hair match, I did I was on the outside and I did a sunset flip into the ring and pinned him 1, 2, 3. But the finish was 1, 2, 3. He touched the rope, so it was a kind of a controversial thing. So it was kind of like that was my first thing that note that they were kind of like worried that I was going to leave because they really didn't I beat Lismark. I took his hair, but I really didn't beat him.
Right.
It was a controversial where they can go somewhere. It didn't make him look as bad. And if I were to jump, then it didn't make me look like I killed one of their big stars like Lismark or something, you know. And from that point on, it became little by little they lost confidence in me. They thought I was going to jump. I was staying. I was happy where I was. I didn't want to go to AAA, and
Yeah, because I was going to ask you because I had 2 different interviews that you did with the timing, and one it seemed like you're really happy, and then the other one after you had switched, you mentioned a lack of opportunities.
yeah, that's basically what it was. You know, after I beat Lismark, at that point in time, I was at the point where I remember tagging with Mystico, and Mystico would come out and get his cheers, but my cheers were 2 to 3 times more than his were. I was becoming a big, and not only in the ring, outside of the ring. You know, I was and stuff on TV. I was dating some singers, you know, like some girls, actresses and stuff, you know, and basically becoming part of the whole TMZ type world, you know, the gossip and the star talk shows and stuff, and I was becoming a big thing, and I felt like because of those guys jumping and the lack of confidence I was going to jump, they weren't giving me anything. I was completely happy, but they kind of turned that against, you know, they kind of turned me against that. And I said in many interviews I was completely happy. I don't want to go to AAA. I thought AAA was a shitty copy of WWE. I thought it sucked. I didn't ever want to go there. And you know, lo and behold, I mean, time after time after time after time, I just felt like CMLL I was swimming against water. You know, I felt like I was at a point where I could become another Vampiro of that extent, filling arenas. But I felt like I was swimming against the current, you know, and you know, sometimes you gotta, you know, at that point in time, AAA was very interested. They offered me very good money, and so I said, you know what, the hell with it.
And CMLL is notoriously they've been slow, very traditional
Yes.
as their knock. I mean, you know, I don't know if, you know, of course I don't work for them, so I can't say this, but you know, I wouldn't take it as personal as it would be business because it's their history. That's
Yeah,
the way
no,
they've
you're
always done
absolutely right.
things.
You know, now that I look back, I shouldn't have taken it personal because it is very slow. You know, and but you know that's
How was business when you made the jump? The business for CMLL compared to AAA?
they both are doing pretty good business. Both are doing pretty good business. It was the point where, you know, WWE entered Mexican television at about that point in time, you know, so the game was about to get switched up a lot, you know, and I say since that time, the business in Mexican wrestling leagues has gone down because WWE's a very dominant force.
Yeah, we could jump ahead a little bit now. I was gonna cover this after the AAA. It's almost like what we're seeing years ago when Vince went national, taking over territory after territory after territory. Now Vince's TV is very strong in Mexico, and AAA has been basically WWE light for many years.
Yeah.
But CMLL's in a position where they have to either serve who they've been serving for years or adjust.
Yeah, well, you know, the thing about CMLL, what's going for them is they have tradition. You know, like it's kind of funny, like Arena Mexico. You know, the same fans have been going there for 50 years, and they're going to continue. It's going to be a traditional cultural thing probably forever. They're always going to draw a good crowd in CMLL, and they always have their. But as far as the TV goes, you know, the ratings. You know, I can remember CMLL and AAA doing 7s, 8s, 9s in ratings. You know, and but then once WWE came, WWE started doing like 13s, 14s, and CMLL and AAA started tailing down more in the 4 range, 4, lower 5, sometimes 6. But just, you know, I think the CMLL is in a better position than AAA.
Why?
Because CMLL, at least I can say for them, they've stuck to their traditional grounds. They do traditional lucha libre, not a lot of storylines. You come to Arena Mexico, you're not going to see a lot of, you know, BS. You know, you're gonna see great lucha libre action. You know, like it was intended to be a long time ago, and what they're doing 40 years ago, and what they're doing to now to today. So it's kind of different. You know, they've stuck to the game plan, whereas AAA, they try to do this really goofy WWE type style crap, and the work rate's bad. The better workers are in CMLL, and you know WWE comes in with you know, incredible production, and you know, if you're gonna do that kind of stuff, all these weird angles, and you know, trying to make these fancy schmancy, you know, backstage scenes and stuff, put some money into your product. You know, these idiots have like a microphone attached to a tree limb or something. You know, like a long tree stick. Mm-hmm. Seriously, and with the microphone attached around it, and some guy's holding it. Just real shitty production. They don't put their money into production. And if you wanna compete or become a WWE type product, it's production. You know, I always say in the gym, like, people ask me, oh, how many hours you spend in the gym? Well, yeah, I go to the gym, but it's 10, 15, 20% of it. 80% of it is the diet, you know, and I think that 80% of it's production a lot of times in wrestling, and AAA's production's horrible, and I think they're hurting from it.
Do you think CMLL is going to survive the WWE influence?
Yeah. I think AAA would go before them. Because AAA, they kind of do goofy stuff and try to make cartoons and stuff and movies, and now they got a video game coming out, and just again, but they do it poorly. You know, they do a cartoon, but it's poorly done. It's not marketed right. Their office was the thing I had against them was their office very unorganized, very just. They want to do WWE type things, but they don't put the time into it, and they create shitty stuff. And when you create shitty stuff, you know, for example, they did a cartoon animated movie. It was like $2 million to make, but I think in the box office they were expecting to make more money. They lost big time on it, you know. And I think the same could happen right now with a video game that's going to come out here pretty soon. Like on the roster, I'm on the roster on this. I'm in the video game. Like probably 8 to 10 of their characters aren't even with the company anymore. You know, like, it just goes to show you. They do things. You know, they don't think ahead. They just don't think ahead.
Just going back to one point, did you have a conversation with Paco Alonso after you made the jump, or have you not talked to him since?
It was done. It was never talked to him since.
You think that door is closed?
I don't think it's closed.
You don't think?
No, because I think Arena Mexico was. I went to AAA, and yeah, I had my fans and stuff, but I think I made a mistake by going to AAA. I should have never went to AAA. I digressed a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like, the Arena Mexico crowd was mine. You know, all in all, I want to get over in Mexico City. That's the Mecca. You know, I care about the Mexican people, but you know, I don't really particularly care if I have to go 4 or 5 hours outside to do a show in León, Guanajuato or something. You know, like, yeah, there's fans there, but just not the extremity. You know, like, it's almost like if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere.
Right.
My thing is, you can make it in Mexico. If you can win the fans in Mexico, you can make it anywhere in lucha libre.
And I'm not really speaking about your contract or your opportunities between the two, but is the money pretty much the same between the two companies? I mean, because usually where the money is, where you're going to see the talent flow.
For me, it was. I made a little more money in AAA, you know, but what Paco Alonso did say to me before I did leave is, you know, because I can tell you, if you want to go over to AAA, that's fine, but they're going to offer you the world for 2 or 3 months, and then after that 2 or 3 months is up, they're going to go back to try and take things away, treat you like shit, you know, and that's what happened. Those are the most truest words ever spoken by anybody in the wrestling business, that they're going to treat you like a king for 2 or 3 months, and then they're going to try to...
When you say they, who is AAA for people that...
AAA is the Rodan family. You know, Antonio Pena was a big time boss. He was the owner, the guy that kind of jumped from CMLL. You know, Paco Alonso and Antonio Pena were together in CMLL, and then Antonio Pena jumped and started his AAA, and you know, he was the mastermind, almost like a Mexican type Vince McMahon. Made the AAA, did well with it, created some great characters like the La Parca character, the Octagon, stuff like that. The characters like that, but then when Antonio Pena died, I think in 2007, his sister's son took over. So, Dorian. Like he's 25 years old. Just it seems like now it's kind of like a 25-year-old kid playing fantasy wrestling. Fantasy baseball and fantasy football.
But has he given a lot of control over to Conan?
Uh, not really. Just more storylines. Conan I think Conan helps a lot in that organization because I think somebody needs to be there, and they have some formal storylines, and if you're gonna basically try to rip WWE off and do their type of show and their type of storylines, then you need to be consistent with that stuff. And I think Conan behind the scenes, even though he can't wrestle as much or really much anymore, he still has a great mind for the business. He understands. He's helped them out a lot.
So any of your problems that you have at AAA are not directed at Conan?
No, not at all. Conan's a friend, and I respect what he's done in the business.
How does it work with AAA and CMLL? Are you allowed to take like indie bookings in Mexico, and what is the indie scene like in Mexico?
Man, it's really hard to describe. It's some guys have contracts, but it's very, very light. Some guys have, some guys are just, the company will sell you, and then some guys have more open agreements. Like right now, it's really a big, it's a big mix of everything. Like it seems like because the business is down, people are just grabbing work wherever they can. People are grabbing work with, going less contract route and more like per dates. Like okay, give me TV. I work your TV for this, and this for cheaper, but I'd like the ability to go work outside dates of my own. So
right.
That's kind of what's going on right now because the business is a little down.
I just want to get a sense of like what independent wrestling life is like in Mexico. Like you chose to stay down in Mexico City, even though you're not working for either CMLL or AAA full time at this time. What do you do?
Well, I mean, I get a couple independent bookings. It's more of a hustle, obviously. There are tons. On any given weekend, there's tons of wrestling shows. There's a lot of. Besides CMLL and AAA, there's a lot of little promotions. I wouldn't say like a Ring of Honor type or there's some wrestling promotions out in California. That run weekly shows or have little weekly television program spots in Mexican television, and I keep pretty consistent. Or I work at least a couple. Pedro Aguayo, he has a company called Pedro's Del Mal. He's kind of working with AAA now, so the shows are going down. But there's always 2-3 opportunities for me to work with them, and independently you can make more money per match than you would in a part of a roster in a league like a CMLL or AAA, and basically that's what I do. And like I said, I'm outside of the ring. I'm kind of a mainstream star there as well. I do a lot of shit like fucking parades and stuff, and right now is the 200 years of independence in Mexico is this year, actually September 16th. So there's a lot of autograph signings and a lot of carnivals and stuff. The Mexican people, they like to celebrate a lot, and so they're always these government people who are running for office and stuff. They always bring guys in to work and. I basically just do promotion on a parade flow and wave to people, with their T-shirt on, stuff like that. So I make my little share in Mexico to pay my bills and stuff, and of course I'm working here in the United States with the Lucha Libre.
And when you went down to Mexico, you really did. I mean, you studied it, but you really didn't know Spanish at all. This is something that's.
No, I thought Amigo was a rent-a-car. I went down there. I knew absolutely nothing, and I built everything from the ground up. Basically, just studied. I studied hard. I took my whole approach was what made me come back was to see what I could actually be there. That I could be a star there, and actually accomplish all my aspirations that I had, and that didn't work for me in WWE. Things like writing a book. I wrote a book, a children's book. I'm a children's author. I went through a publishing company, uh, wrote the book in English, studied the topic. It's about bullying, or bullying kids in school and stuff. It's called Marco Corleone, Las Primeras Luchas de mi Vida, which means the first fights in my life. I talk about how, problems on the school bus with kids, problems with name calling. There's 7 different, topics and stuff, not to get into it, but I studied it, wrote it, and basically hired translators to translate in Spanish, and now it's more so than just an accomplishment. It's a big hit. People, the magazines and stuff are taking real kindly to it because it's a great thing. My whole thing in writing it was not really to make money, because if you write a book, it's pretty hard to make money off of it.
Mm-hmm.
You can sell them out of the back of your car for and try to make profits and stuff, but more I did it because I owe Mexico a lot. Mexico gave me my career back. It made me fall in love with wrestling again. And I kind of lost the love a little bit. You get kind of banged around, Raw, SmackDown, heel, baby. You just kind of get sick of the politics and everything, and then you get released, and you feel like, what do I have to show for it now? This is the only job I've ever had. Now what do I have? So now, writing a book and doing stuff, like, I owe Mexico because they took me in, they accepted me. I'm one of their own. I have a Mexican girlfriend, over a year. I've studied, taken time to learn the Spanish, learn the culture, learn the food, burnt my mouth off with jalapeno, and, picante. But it's been a process, and I wanted to do it the right way, because I see so many people, or I've seen cases in the past where people come into I'm not going to come and take your girls, drink your wine, eat your food without giving something back. You understand? And that was my whole premise: learning Spanish and doing something to give back to the community. I'm very active in campaigns for kids with AIDS, kids with HIV, kids with cancer. I did a huge campaign with prostate, getting tested for prostate cancer and stuff, and it's a new experience every day. I mean, I'm not going to call myself fluent, but I wake up and, it's not my number one language.
What language do you dream in now? That's
There's a lot of Spanish.
Yeah.
Spanish, yeah. And I wake up and my girlfriend's laying beside me, and Spanish until I go to from when I wake up until I go to bed.
Wow. That's why I think this interview is so neat, because there's so many guys that, for whatever reason, get taken in by the WWE machine, and sometimes it sticks and sometimes it doesn't, and you just as could have been in Batista's role and all the money that came along with the spot that he was given.
Yeah.
That could have been your spot.
Could have, yeah.
But and regrets or not, that's not the question.
Yeah.
But you could have ended it there, but you made a life of it somewhere else.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I don't think, would have the courage.
Yeah.
Some people go to Japan, but I'm trying to think if anyone has made the impact in Mexico that you have since Vampiro.
Yeah, no, nobody. Nobody even close. Nobody close. It was pretty much Vampiro and me, because it's a very touchy situation. It's not easy to uproot. You take all your American customs, your culture, the food you eat, the cars you drive, the crime you deal with, whatever, the schooling systems, everything, and then pick you up and drop you into something completely different. It was very, very difficult. It's very, very hard, and the first year for me was very, very difficult. But I feel as if, like, now I'm a big fan of it. I made some statements about Japan, that I didn't like it that much, but I kind of lean more towards, like, I almost feel like now, like, I've been in Mexico, I've done my thing in Mexico, I've made a name for myself. I almost feel like taking more of an international route, maybe going to Japan and maybe learning that language, maybe sticking there, living there for a year or two, and seeing what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Go as a masked wrestler or something. I don't know, but it's great. It's great, and it's been a great experience. And I think I've grown as a person, and I've furthered my career. Like, there's not many shows in town. Like, you start off in WWE. There's WWE. There's TNA. There's a couple wrestling. Independence is here. is strong, but it's hard to make a living, a real living. So I'm lucky. I'm lucky, and I think I have a lot to do with this thanking the Mexican people.
The project that I don't want to call it a project. The company that you're working for primarily now is Lucha Libre USA. For years, everybody's been just. It seems like it's almost inevitable that Lucha Libre will cross into the United States and take advantage of the large Hispanic population that we have. It's almost assumed that it's going to be successful. The question's just been by whom. In the latest attempt is here with Lucha Libre USA getting MTV clearances and stuff. Why do you think this market has gone untapped so long?
Well, it's difficult. It's difficult starting a wrestling league in general that applies to the whole country. I mean, we apply to the whole country, of course, but we are very geared towards it is for the Latin fans as well. Obviously we're on MTV2 and MTV3, so we want to peg a lot of the Latin market, but it's hard. It's a big start a wrestling company is very, very difficult. And then on top of that, to start a wrestling company, which is Lucha Libre style Lucha Libre, which is basically very, very unknown to people in the States. So not only are you trying to survive in a market that's hard to start to begin with, you're re-educating the people. On the other end of that, it's something different, a different style. Seeing the different masks and the different costumes, it can help us and things like that. But the whole the way I feel like it, the way I describe it, for me anyways, and I have a lot of I help a lot in the office and what goes on, the kind of production of things behind the scenes. And I basically, my whole theory is, I went to Mexico in 2006. I fell in love with the culture, the masks, the characters, the history, the Lismarks, the Teniblises, the passing the masks on from generation to generation. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the crowd participation, the passion, and the energy that they have. And basically, I hope that to my American people here that they can fall in love with it like I did. It's an uphill battle because it's we're bringing that product and bringing it here. But that's basically to give something to the Latin people. The Latinos and also to basically just give them a different option. It's not anything you're gonna see for WWE. It's different than different WWE or TNA. So for the casual wrestling fan, it's something you can enjoy, and on a channel, on a system like MTV, it's a good start. It's a huge marketing power. MTV, it's pop culture. So basically, if we can mix Mexican culture with our pop culture, maybe we have a win-win situation. We're doing okay so far. There's bumps in the road, like any. I'm not saying this is going to be easy, but we're surviving. We're surviving, and we're trying to make it.
I think tonight was scheduled to be the 6th episode, I believe, or maybe the 7th.
Yeah, I believe seventh.
Seventh.
Yep.
What type of feedback have you gotten so far from the first 6?
Good. I think we some of the names, we don't have a lot of huge names. We got guys like Teneblis and Lismark, Mascuda Dorada, Minis and stuff, but we need to add to it more. I think we need to add even more to the roster, which we're planning on. And I think production, like I said, production is, we can keep improving the production. It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard going from city to city to city to city. It's cool to see, for my Mexican friends and guys on the roster, for them to see different parts of the United States for the first time. But at the same time, it's very hard from a production standpoint to come into a Las Vegas arena and then come into a Charlotte arena and come to, where I could see ourselves leaning soon to more like a TNA Impact Zone type thing.
I was going to say, because it's an odd choice being a new company to go at. I mean, you've gone after some aggressively sized buildings.
Yeah. And we knew it'd be tough to draw, it's just that's all part of this starting off from scratch and trying to start a new company. But I think in the future I could see us leaning more towards a home, where the production costs are, the production's gonna be better, production costs will be lower. We can do more stuff. We don't have to come in and set up shop and then take down shop, set up shop all the time. I think that takes away from a lot of stuff. Number one, about things we can production is so important. So if we're producing a better show and producing something better for the TV, that works. And then because we don't have to shut down shop, open up shop every time, we can kind of concentrate more on the integral part of it. Like the production, like the matches itself, the talent. The soap operas type stuff we have in the back. The entertainment aspect of things.
Do you think maybe you've tried to serve too many masters for being a young company? Because it seems like you obviously on MTV this is a TV show, but you've also positioned itself as kind of being a live event.
Yeah.
Like TNA usually approach, they didn't try to move into the live event markets for several years until after their TV show had some more stronger legs underneath it.
No, yeah, I think I think we started off. It's been a little difficult. It's been a little difficult, but again, it's just we need more TV time, more fixture, because it's just really kind of hard to have a new product and then just working those live events and getting people to come out, because we don't have that background. Like we don't have that long historical background. It's not like we were already a company. If you took a CMLL or a AAA and they've done some, like AAA, when I was with AAA, we did some tours, and we drew pretty decent, better than what we're drawing now. That's because to some extent they got 15 years under their belt. We just like TNA starting to heat up a little bit, and every company gets, the longer you stay around, the stronger you become, and you understand how to kind of figure things out, and that's what we're doing. And I think that's one of them. Maybe to be in one home is better than maybe doing the house show live event route. I think in the future I could see us doing a TV in one spot, and then once our popularity gets up a little more, start doing some live events, but do it at our pace, not really, because it's hard. Not when we come into a new arena like tonight, or like in Vegas, or a new area, we're doing promotion, explaining to people what lucha libre is, explaining to who our wrestlers are, getting the people to come out. Then the production. It's a lot. So I think they say in Mexico, poco a poco, little by little.
Did you have some challenge? I know you were involved in the decision making on some of the guys to put on the roster. Were there some guys that you had targeted in Mexico that, for whatever reason, that maybe it was trust or not, they just didn't seem to have any involvement in taking the risk that you took?
Say that again?
Were there any guys that we would probably, let's just say, I'm just going to use Dr. Wagner for an example. Were there any guys that you targeted that would be well-known lucha stars that just weren't interested in participating in this U.S. product?
No. I think it's more probably the cost of things. Like, yeah, we want to go out and get a Santo or a Blue Demon, but they can be pretty expensive too. I mean, we have costs and stuff and budgets and stuff, and no, but everyone pretty much, even Santo. I've shown Santo little on my iPod little clips of our stuff, and he's very intrigued by it, and I hope soon, guys like him or Blue Demon, we can bring some guys like that in, but everyone's pretty much, the American market. They see what the WWE's done in the Mexican market, so I think we're basically, everyone likes the idea and the positiveness of bringing a Mexican product and bringing it to the United States, and trying to build in America. People like that idea. Everyone I've pretty much talked to, or whether they've come with us or not come with us, they think it's a great concept, and they think it's something they'd like to be a part of at one time or another.
A lot of fans have been skeptical of MTV being involved. They did, about 2 years ago, have another wrestling product that they kind of pulled the plug on before it ever took off. Are you familiar with?
Wrestling Society X, yeah.
Okay.
some of those things were doomed. You know, like if I watched the program, it was a half-hour program. It seemed like they were kind of fitting 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. You know, luckily for us, we have an hour on TV. Usually the system is we have 3 matches per show with the little in-between stuff, you know, and I think that's easy for people to grasp, you know. I mean, the American public are like babies, you know. We have to spoon feed them lucha libre because they don't know what it is. So if we give them, you know, spoon by spoon, it's gonna work, you know. Like 3 matches, a 1-hour program, and you know, with Wrestling Society X, it was just they had great talent and stuff. It's hard to do a half-hour wrestling program, you know. It's like a blur. It's you know, and you. So, no, but MTV's been very, very, very cooperating thus far, and I think they're going to continue to be that way.
Do you take, and that was my follow-up question, is this tonight, and again, I know this is going to be a terrible way to ask the question because someone who's not watching it tonight, the first time ever they've preempted the show from its starting point. I don't think it's airing tonight in its original broadcast time. They bumped it for a marathon of some other show.
Oh, tonight?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know about that, but I wouldn't be worried with it. They're happy with it. MTV's happy with it. You know, we've got some bumps. You know, but they're happy with the product, and like I said, we can a few of the first couple weeks. I mean, we made a good raise in the percentage of MTV3, you know, and MTV2 of Latin viewers and stuff. So, you know, I think they're looking to increase their volume of viewers in the Latin market. So I think we're helping in that range. I think it's just basically what we had talked about. You know, basically we need to improve our production and little by little just kind of spoon feed the American public. You know, give them another choice other than TNA and other than WWE.
Does the Lucha Libre USA success depend on finding the American fans that would be interested in the lucha, or do you think there's enough of a base out there of the Hispanic fans that might appreciate the?
I think there's enough a base of Hispanic fans, but I think for sure we need the American participation as well. For sure, because that's, you know, we kind of almost count on having some of the Latin fans, you know, the people that are from Mexico or their parents or grandparents, you know, they know Lucha Libre and they know some of the names, and they know they've seen different Lucha Libre late night on Galavision or something, of AAA or CMLL, and they're intrigued by it. But yeah, we want to get those Americans, the casual American fans that really don't know about it. That's why, you know, I do a crap load of interviews and it's in Spanish and in English in the United States, promoting this, because that's the only way it's going to do it. You know, really get that word out there. First, in order for people to watch, they need to know that we're out there. So that's our step.
And you keep saying this in every interview that I've ever read. You always said that this is when everybody tries to compare it to what's out there now, comparing it to WWE or TNA or Ring of Honor, you always seem to cut them off and say this is a different product.
Yeah.
Why is it so important to explain to people how different it is?
Well, it's important because it is different. It is different, and the styles. And that's one thing we want to preserve. We want to preserve the lucha libre, authentic lucha libre, and I don't think we have any choice because all these guys are Mexican luchadors who, for 5, 10, however long their careers are, have been wrestling authentic Mexican lucha libre. The style, it's a little different, you know, and it's important because man, if you're coming in trying to compete with the WWE right off the bat, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. You're going to lose on the production end. You're going to lose on the fan end, and we don't want to be a second WWE or a second TNA or even a second Ring of Honor. You know, Ring of Honor is different than WWE. You know, it's kind of a more of a almost, I feel like it's a religion or a cult. You know, like and that's cool. And that's cool. That's what turns people on. And I think we need to gain that kind of position also in the market. You know, something different. Just another option. You know, nobody likes having chicken every single night. You know, sometimes you like a little, you know, you like a little steak or something. You know, and that's what we're hoping to do is create a position, improve on that position, and one by one win over not only the Latin fans but the casual American fans as well.
I'm certainly no expert on this, but I think I've seen more of my share of lucha libre and poriesu and certainly enough of American style wrestling to say that when it's done at its best, I think lucha libre is the highest art form of all pro wrestling out there. It's an unbelievable spectacular
It's
that
pretty,
involves so many pieces.
yeah, it's pretty poetic. Lucha Libre is you look at the history. Like it's more than just a. In Mexico they consider it a sport. We're in the newspaper every day for the results, who beat who and stuff, and I kind of like that. I kind of like that, and lucha libre at its best, if it's done right, is very, very exciting and very, very poetic. The very, very beautiful moves and it's strong as well. It's nitty gritty when it needs to be nitty gritty, but it's a very, very beautiful, suave, brand of wrestling. And when it's done right, and then you add in the history behind the masks, like a third generation wrestler, or you see a mini who's competing against a regular sized wrestler, or you have an exotico type wrestler. It adds a different taste, adds a different feel to it, and yeah, I'd have to agree with you. Like from everything I've seen, when lucha libre is at its best, at its maximum level, it's really hard to beat.
All right. Mark Jindrak, whatever you're doing, continued success. I'm a big fan of your work. I want to thank you for the time and the honesty that you gave us today.
Thank you,
and
sir.
we wish you and Lucha Libre USA the best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, fans. Thank you.
The following DVD presentation was originally produced for Hjbc TV, your online home for the best shoot interviews, matches, and original content. Hjbc TV, the future is now.